Sunday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. Folks, we are back. We're back in your lives. It feels like it's been a long time. I'm not sure why. It's to my recollection, it's only been a week. I'm excited for this podcast. Jake has cinnamon toast crunch and Pop Tarts in his background today. No clue why. I don't know if that's to throw me off my game to make my commentary less salient. He even has a giant sized cinnamon toast crunch, which is quite the investment. I mean, that's at least $5.
Yeah,
Has to be.
I don't remember how much it was, but it was a worthy investment. I mean, it was a little bit of a cheat weekend for me.
I can tell.
Had these around. Thanks. Had these around.
Not by your appearance. I just want to point that out for the record.
Wow.
Just the fact that you have cinnamon toast crunch in your background.
Just shots fired. Dude, is it showing that much? Wow.
No,
one weekend? All the progress I've made. Wow. Thanks, Felix.
That's not what I meant.
But so had some cinnamon toast crunch and some Pop Tarts, and figured with cinnamon toast crunch being a one of the long going bits for this podcast, with the fact that for whatever reason you don't like it and you have never tried it, I figured I'd need to get on camera. And then we had our Pop Tart debate last week, so I was like, I also had Pop Tarts on the weekend, so I have both of these things. Both of them are podcast relevant. Let's just get them on camera for everyone. Start this off fun. It's the off season. It's a wacky podcast. It's going to be a weird one. It's all going to be Twitter Q&A. We're going to go all over the place with this episode, so might as well start it on a fun note with the talking point of Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Pop-Tarts.
I appreciate this. I really do.
Yeah.
I actually really appreciate this.
This is what I'm here for. I'm the wild card.
You bring the color. You bring the color to the show.
Yeah.
I'm just here for the ride. Okay. Well, I don't really have anything else. There's no, just off the top here, there quite literally was no Ducks news this week. I can't think of a single news item. Maybe the only thing you can say is that there was a cool shoot with Trevor Zegras at Newport Beach for Bauer hockey.
Yeah. That was actually
really cool.
That was really cool. And the fact they built the synthetic ice rink there. And I mean, you can just, it's one of those things where I feel like I'm not going to really appreciate what Trevor Zegras can do until I actually see him in person in warm-ups.
Yeah.
Because when you watch those warm-up routine videos that he has, where he's just one-handed, the puck's on a string on his stick, just in the air, and it's just absolutely insane. He did that during that shoot, and it's just how does he understand physics this well? And understand how to keep the puck on a stick in all these different situations and not have it fly off and go over. Because I don't know, folks, if you've ever tried, if you've had a puck on your stick and you're kind of going back and forth with it lacrosse style, trying to keep it on there, it's not easy. And the fact that he does it one-handed, spinning in all these weird ways, it's bizarre how easy he makes it look, because that is not easy to do, even just in a normal fashion, let alone one-handed spinning around doing it.
So any hockey fan who's on Instagram has seen the accounts of guys who do that very, very well. There are accounts, there's different guys. Pavel Barber is one of them. There's another guy who I'm forgetting right now. Apologies, but that they are excellent. I forget his name. He's the guy that always wears the beanie. Anyway, that are just excellent at these trick plays, right? And that they'll just spin the puck around in the air on their stick. And that's their whole thing. And they have huge followings because of that. And with Trevor Zegras, he can just kind of do that casually, while also, just pulling that out of the bag just for a photo shoot. But, we'll never actually use that in the game. So just shows how skilled he really is. Anyway, there's your Zegras praise as per usual. But for today's show, we went to Twitter, which we tend to do from time to time, and ask people for some questions. Give us some topics. Give us some things that you guys want to hear, as we are kind of in this kind of waiting period of the offseason, where we're waiting for the Stanley Cup playoffs to be over, waiting to get to the draft, the 2 drafts this summer, get to free agency. So some of the questions we got, actually a lot of them are about that and what the Ducks will do this summer.
Before we do that, though, I do want to mention this, and this is something you and I were talking about briefly before we got going here, and so let's get into Q&A after this. But one thing that I made note of today, as I was listening to the 31 Thoughts podcast from, I believe it was Friday's episode, was that Elliot Friedman mentioned that I'm trying to refresh myself on the guy's name, but
Newell Brown.
No, Bradshaw. Newell Brown.
Oh, okay.
Bradshaw was the Ducks were supposedly very much in on Bradshaw, who was an assistant coach in Columbus for a while, but he was actually just hired by the Vancouver Canucks to become their assistant coach and run their power play, and Newell Brown was let go. And then kind of following up on that, Elliot Friedman kind of mentions that there's a connection, though, with the Ducks and Newell Brown, and he wouldn't be surprised if Newell Brown ends up landing on his feet in Anaheim. And even Eric Stevens made mention of it in his that's Twitter, in his real time on The Athletic, basically saying Newell Brown was let go, and he could definitely see the Ducks looking to bring him back as an assistant coach after the fact that he had already had 2 tours with the club from 98 to 2000, and I think a little bit more infamously as an assistant from 05 to 2010, including the Stanley Cup run. And after he left the Ducks, or was let go by the Ducks, kind of falling on the sword for some Randy Carlyle issues, he went to the Vancouver Canucks and was a big part of their power play that was one of the best in the league from 2010-2011 through 2012-2013. Now, granted, part of that is obviously going to be due to the fact that the Sedins were with those Canucks teams, but you still have to give the coach some credit for putting together the guys in the right way, playing a correct system. And there was a really good article put out by Canucks Army actually discussing the Canucks power play over the last little bit, because after leaving the Canucks, he went to Arizona for 4 seasons, then actually came back to the Canucks 17-18 through this past season. And so there was a really good article breaking down kind of the last couple seasons. And in 17-18, it was the Sedins' last year, and the fact that for whatever reason, Newell Brown and the Sedins just clicked. And ever since then, there have been some issues with stagnation with the Canucks power play. But if you're looking for some positives, there was a really good tweet put out by Thomas Drance that pointed out that in Newell Brown's second tour of duty with the Canucks, the Vancouver Canucks had the same power play goal differential as the Washington Capitals. Vancouver didn't have personnel as good as Washington, so he must have been doing something right. Will be a big get for somebody. And so the article does a really good job of diving into some of the numbers, kind of disproving some of this, that maybe the Canucks power play wasn't as good as maybe it was made out to be due to some lack of movement, different things like that. But I think kind of where I kind of land on this is that no matter what, I think Newell Brown would improve the power play.
Would be an upgrade over Mark Morrison,
because the Ducks were the Ducks had an 8% power play percentage. Now, granted, part of that would be due to come up over the course of a full 82 game season. Part of that is due to lack of luck, lack of whatever you want to call it. Their XGF was higher than their goals for. It would have eventually come up somewhat, but I think no matter what, you look at Newell Brown, and even if maybe you try to talk down the Canucks power play slightly, I think no matter what, it's going to be an upgrade. And even if it just brings the Ducks power play up to a more average level, that's an upgrade for this Ducks team.
Yeah, totally. And I do think that for the Ducks, one of the criticisms of the Canucks power play has been that there's a predictability there, that it always goes to the same spots. That's what that article mentioned from Canucks Army. And I think for the Ducks, getting to that point would actually be beneficial, of just going to, like, you have a certain script of plays that you're going to go to over and over again, because that's something that they didn't really do last year. There wasn't a whole lot of cohesion. They didn't have those pet plays that they would go to. And if they did, they just weren't really that effective. And so I think just a little stability, a little structure would actually help this power play.
And one thing they mentioned is not this past season, but the season before, that power play had a lot of success in Vancouver, and that actually drove them to their postseason success. And a lot of that was due to the fact of being able to implement Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson, and the fact that he was able to get them going. The issue this season is that he kind of went back to that well too much with just those 2 players, and teams were able to game plan it a bit better. But kind of if you're trying to look forward to the Ducks kind of have that in Drysdale and Zegras. And if the Ducks can get to the point where they're able to utilize that to their advantage, that's a good first step. And at least you're eventually getting to that point where teams have to game plan for that.
And here's the thing, and that's I think the saving grace for all of this for Newell Brown, if he does become the Ducks assistant coach that handles the power play, we don't know that yet, but people in the know seem to be at least saying it makes sense, is that they do have that piece in Trevor Zegras that you can build around for a power play. So although the Ducks don't have the talent level of a Canucks power play maybe right now, even with like Pettersson and Hughes, maybe they do more than we think with Zegras alone, and then building around him. So if a guy like Newell Brown comes in who has had success at the NHL level formulating power plays and just at least getting the most out of the available talent, well then, hey, that could be a really good sign for the Ducks, because as we've said many, many times on this podcast, the power play has been really a sore spot. And it's not just us saying that. I mean, Dallas Aikens has said that. Dallas Aikens has said there's like a dark cloud hanging over them for the power play. So
Bob
clearly
Murray,
it's an area they need to
Bob
improve. Bob
Murray
Murray has
has
said
said
it.
it
Yeah.
multiple times, and it really seems like Mark Morrison is probably going to fall on that sword, and probably rightfully so if he's the guy that's supposed to be running the power play. And it sounds as if from Bob Murray's comments that they kind of took that away from Mark Morrison as the season went along and gave it to Dallas Aikens because it was just so poor, and Dallas Aikens really took hold of that. So I think that all the stars aligning for Newell Brown coming back to Anaheim would make sense. I mean, Bob Murray loves a good retread. Look at Randy Carlyle, look at Francois Beauchemin, look at there's a laundry list. I think a lot of GMs do. I don't think that's necessarily just a Bob Murray thing.
It's an NHL staple
to
do that.
Because it's safe. It's something you know what you're going to be getting. And I think with Newell Brown, I actually think it's not an awful decision because there's been enough time separated that you have this sample size of some success for him outside of the Ducks organization, running a very good Canucks power play. And, I mean, it's been over 10 years, over a decade since he was behind a Ducks bench. So I think a lot of things would make a lot of sense there. I think there's the familiarity aspect. I think the Samuelis know the guy if they want to hire him. I don't necessarily think he's going to be this high-profile, high-cost assistant coach that is going to get paid significantly by someone else. So, I mean, he was just let go by the Canucks, who had a pretty poor season. So I think if you're looking from a cost perspective for the Ducks, I don't think he's going to be this high-cost guy. So I think from that perspective, it also makes some sense for them. And so I think kind of all things considered, I could see this being announced in the next week or two.
Interesting. Big prediction. Let me ask you this, just since we're on the topic of the power play, which is one of my favorites. Going into next season, what does your ideal first unit look like for the Ducks on the power play?
Ooh.
So I can give you mine if you want. This is what's rolling around in my head.
Let me take a quick stab. So I think it's got to be Drysdale at the point, Zegras on one side. I think you have to have Comtois either front net or in the bumper position. Troy Terry on the other side from Trevor Zegras. And then, honestly, I would probably have Comtois front net and Henrique in the bumper.
So my only question there, and I agree with that selection of players. I mean, you could say maybe Fowler or Drysdale at the top as the guy at the point. I think either is, or Kevin Shattenkirk, assuming he's still on the team by then. The thing is, when we saw Zegras in the power play last season, he was often on the right flank from the right circle. And he is a left-handed shot. And so do you put Troy Terry on his off wing on the left side, on the left face-off circle, so left facing the net? That is kind of interesting to me because I feel like Troy Terry's best work, at least that I've seen on the power play, has been when he is on his strong side. And so do you,
which guy do you put on his offside, basically, if you have both of them out there?
Or do you just put them both on their strong sides? Do you have Trevor Zegras? Do you put him over on the left and then have him kind of be that dual threat of a shot and a pass? Because although I think Trevor Zegras is a super high ceiling offensively, at least right now, I don't think his one-timer is a huge strength. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities to showcase it just because of the way that the Ducks power play struggled so much to get set up. But I think if you have him on his strong side on the left, you can use that dual threat of, because he's got a good kind of pulling wrist shot. And then if you have Troy Terry on the right, who also has that, I think that can make for a very interesting kind of cross-ice passing between those two. Well, and then Henrique and Comtois between them.
I think Comtois is a front net, Henrique front net. And now that I think about it, I actually kind of think Troy Terry in the bumper position would be kind of interesting because of how good of his hands are. And then you have Comtois as a left-handed shot on the right side, keep Zegras on the left side, and then you have a one-timer option for Zegras to feed to.
Yeah. That could be interesting as well. I mean, I think that regardless, this group of five, or at least this group of four forwards, should be the first power play.
Yeah, I think Adam Henrique, for all the jokes everyone wants to make, for everything with how the Ducks organization has treated him, if he's on this Ducks roster next year, he's still one of the most effective guys at putting the puck in the back of the net for this Ducks franchise, even at his advanced age. And so I think he has to be there. I mean, what's interesting is, we both assume Ryan Getzlaf is going to be back, and so neither of us mentioned him on that first power play.
Or someone else.
Who is the
a certain 28-year-old Swedish winger.
Honestly, you could put Raquel out there instead of Henrique.
Yeah, so I think Raquel could be in that left side if you
Yeah,
want to keep Zegras on the right,
yeah,
because he could be just that shooting option. The thing with Raquel is he just hasn't really shown to be super effective from that side, but I still kind of want to see more of it,
yeah.
especially with Zegras over like a longer
And the
sample.
thing is, as we kind of piece together this power play, it kind of really puts into focus just how poor coaching has been for this Ducks power play, because this shouldn't be that much of a rocket science type of situation. This shouldn't be that hard. And these are good players out there, and this power play should not be an 8% power play.
Well, Jake, I mean, when you can start off training camp by putting Derek Grant at the net front, you have to do it, right?
And as much
Like,
as
like,
much
like,
as much as you and I have defended Danton Heinen, having him on the first power play unit over a guy like Troy Terry to start the season,
mhm.
just
Well,
just baffling, just
well, I
out
think
way out there for this team.
Well, I think especially towards the end of the season for Anaheim, when I think the coaching staff started making decisions that I would agree with more. I think that their power play started resembling something that like we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
My only thing that I would want to see change is I want them to get away from having this hard cutoff of at a minute or 45 seconds change units. I want to see that first unit get 90 seconds or like 80
So
seconds out there.
it's funny that you bring that up, because as I want to find this in this article, so I actually had closed the article, but there was something mentioned in that Canucks Army post that kind of really stuck out to me after kind of reading through it. And I want to find the exact line that they had, but it was here it is. The first unit began to stay. So basically, they're talking about the fact of the stagnation and the Hughes and Pedersen connection. The teams were starting to eventually kind of key in on that. But one thing that you mentioned, or the article mentions, is the first unit began to stay out longer and longer, often taking up the full 2 minutes of a man advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of went into like where the puck was going and how
Washington does that to a degree.
yeah. And so if that's something that was kind of Newell Brown strategy, and I mean, granted, it didn't work out that well in certain senses, but I think that shows there's more of a willingness to leave out that first unit, which I think would be an interesting kind of interesting in Anaheim to see what ends up happening, because of Dallas Eakins appearing to really be dead set in the fact that the first unit's out there for a minute, the second unit then goes out.
If that, I mean, sometimes they would be out there for like 45
Yeah.
seconds. One other setup that I would be curious to see would be Zegras on the left, and this isn't a huge variation, but Zegras on the left, Henrique or Comtois on the bumper or net front, so those two can kind of interchange, and then Raquel on the right side and Shattenkirk at the top.
Yep.
I think that that setup would be really interesting. Another variation, because now we're just going all in on this, one guy that, because the thing with net front is that the guy that's quote unquote net front doesn't actually have to be in front of the net the entire time. That's the guy who's popping out along the goal line and who's working it down low. And one guy that I think would be awesome for that spot would be Ryan Getzlaf. I mean, if he's on the team, which I think he will be, but if he is on the team, I think he would be great for that spot, because that's where he makes his money, is down low, finding open guys, and he's big enough to where he can win those battles and just maintain possession. So that would be another option. So I think the big takeaway from this extended conversation about the power play strategies, the Ducks have enough pieces to where they should be able to put something together and make it work.
Yeah.
And maybe Newell Brown will be that guy to do it.
Yep.
Is there any consideration to Isaac Lindstrom here or Max Jones?
No. Max Jones, if anything, is a front net presence, but I'd rather have Adam Henrique there.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like,
okay.
I don't think it's that controversial either to say that. I mean,
no, I don't think so either.
Adam Henrique is a career like 16% shooter, and we talk about shooting regression, but over a certain period of time, sometimes that just stays that high because of the shooting talent. And Adam Henrique has shown that he has the talent to put the puck in the back of the net at a high rate, and Max Jones hasn't done that. That plain and simple.
Yeah, and you can run everything through Trevor Zegras. That's the beauty of having an elite playmaker.
I mean, if you're Newell Brown, you have to be licking your chops, honestly, at the idea of coming to Anaheim, because you've just left Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. Now you're going to have Jamie Drysdale and Trevor Zegras to work with. Like, that's a dream to go from that situation to this one.
Yeah, and Jamie Drysdale did show some flashes in the offensive zone, and when we were kind of profiling him for the draft, I don't think any of us said that he was projecting as a power play quarterback, but a
Yeah.
guy who could contribute on a power play. And he's got the mobility and
What
the passing vision to just keep the wheels moving.
That's kind of what I saw the most from him on the power play for them this season, is just his ability to walk the blue line. And it's not necessarily finding a shot or playmaking, but it's essentially him being able to walk the line and draw guys to him and feed it to more wide open Trevor Zegras as a result of it.
Yeah, and I think what's important for the Ducks for right now in terms of establishing their confidence, establishing their continuity on the power play is having guys who will help maintain puck possession, to just stay in the zone as long as you possibly can to get your reps in game situations. Because it's one thing in practice when you're going against the penalty killers and the taxi squad, but in a live game, it's a completely different beast. So it will be very fascinating to see what the Ducks are going to end up doing there and just how it will look. It's funny, despite this team being so bad last season, I'm still very curious to see what those little changes will be going into next year.
Yep, definitely.
That's why we do this podcast, because we are interested in this stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Well, do you want to get into the questions?
Yep.
To the Twitter questions?
Let's get into it. So we will be able to
I have the list here.
Yeah, so we're going to get into these questions, and then afterwards we obviously will have time for Twitch questions. So this is basically out. I mean, that was really our only topic, was talking about Newell Brown. So the rest of this is kind of just going to be answering questions, going through it. So level 2 PID, we will I see your question. We'll get to that kind of after we run through all of these questions from Twitter, and we'll get to all the Twitch questions afterwards. So go for it.
Yeah, so I think some of these, we'll try to go as in depth as we can. Others, we'll give the answer that we can come up with here. This is going to be shooting from the hip, so it could go any which way. Let's start with this question from Jamie. What are the Ducks going to do with all that cap room? That is the quote.
I've broken this down a couple different times now. So the Ducks, they will have, if they kind of give out all the contracts based on Evolving Hockey's projections for all the different contracts, they will end up with probably about $7 million in cap space roughly, and that's pre-using Ryan Kessler's LTIR. So if they want to get up to the cap and then use LTIR in addition to that, they can. It does seem as if there is an internal budget though. When you look at Bob Murray's quotes, you look at a lot of different things. So it would not shock me if the Ducks just kind of utilize that cap space. I mean, honestly, if I had full permission from
by utilize that cap space, do you mean like they're going to use all of it? Or
sorry, let me phrase that. I don't think that the Ducks are going to utilize it. I think that's just going to stay there. They're going to essentially keep that. I guess for next, or you can't really roll it over at all. But
so just a quick question:
accrue it all.
When you're counting this up, are you including potentially Getzlaf coming back?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yep, Getzlaf coming back. Stolar's becoming the backup goalie for the Ducks next season. Some guys on ELCs coming up, all different situations. They should end up with about $7 million or so in cap space. Having said that, if I was the GM, if I had full permission from the Samuelis to spend a little bit more money, what I would do is one of two things. And there's actually another question on this that I think is a very interesting one that we can get into slightly. But I would either look at acquiring a bad money deal, maybe being someone that can jump in and take a bad money deal from a team that's in desperate situation with Seattle and take a pick from them as a result of it. And then they get to keep the player that they want to keep from instead of Seattle taking them. So essentially coming in to make this side deal to screw over Seattle a little bit, or just taking on a bad money deal in general to help out a team that's in a cap bind. And so I would look to do that if there's a short-term 1-year deal for that some team wants to get off their cap sheet, and you can pick up an additional pick for it. Or I would look to this is a question we'll get into, signing a guy maybe to a little bit more money than I would be comfortable with, but on a 1-year deal, maybe a more veteran type of player that then you can flip at the deadline for picks. And a guy that maybe he fits the mold of a culture type signing that you want. And maybe he can help with that, help mentor a guy like Zegras and things like that. And there's a name that I don't think he's that great of a player, but I think it's essentially a guy that just would fill a spot. The issue for the Ducks is they don't necessarily have too many of those types of spots. But I think that it would be interesting to do that because you could then flip them for picks at the deadline.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think that that would be a wise use of cap space because, as Bob Murray alluded to in his end of season press conference, this is kind of an interesting marketplace with a lot of teams being stressed by the flat cap and cap space being an asset. And so maybe the Ducks will explore that avenue. I mean, it wouldn't shock me at all because I think for this team, it doesn't make sense to go out and try to get a free agent
Well,
to actually try to
yeah.
make the playoffs next year or
And
something like that.
especially if you try to move out an Adam Henrique, if you move out a Jakob Silverberg, if you move out these guys that people say are the culture type of guys for this team and you move them out for cap purposes, I think bringing in a guy, and this is a name that I'll kind of bring up or discuss a little bit more in depth, but I think a Nick Foligno, if he would take a 1-year deal, I think that would potentially be an interesting type of player to bring in. If you're looking for that culture type of player, I don't think he's necessarily the best player out there, but
No.
if he's a guy that kind of fits that mold, and the main reason for it is I think he fits that mold and he would get you something in return at the deadline
Yeah,
because what he
but
brings is valued.
the value there is contingent on the Ducks actually flipping him at the
Yes,
deadline.
100%, 100%. Which who knows if they would do it, but that's mainly why that name is sticking out to me. That I'm like, Nick Foligno was just moved for a first round pick. There's no way another team like a team wouldn't do that again next summer or next deadline.
The league clearly values him, and especially if he were to play on the Ducks, you'd assume he'd get a lot of opportunities to pile up points and kind of showcase
he could be
himself.
that front. He could be the front net presence on that first power play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think that it is important to kind of just highlight here, though, that potentially that narrative of the Ducks having cap room this summer and this kind of being a huge, turning of the page summer it's not really that.
No.
Just looking at it.
They have the space if they want to go out and make an Eichel deal. They do have the space to do that. They would if I were them, I would want to move out additional money to make that work, though, because I would not make that deal and then go into LTIR as a result of it. I would try to find ways to get myself cap compliant while adding that deal. Whether that is something as dumb as buying out an Adam Henrique or a Jakob Silverberg, who knows? But
the Eichel situation, it's happening.
I mean,
it's happening.
The noise is growing, and the noise is growing for the Ducks also, I think, specifically.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that really fascinates me about all this is that if the Ducks are actually going to inquire on Eichel again, or if they're going to try that this summer, how far are they willing to go to bring in a Jack Eichel? And does it make sense? I mean, this is a whole separate podcast, but
yeah, and we have a question on this, and we'll let's keep it shorter when we get to that answer. But I mean, it's so easy to connect the dots though here, where I didn't think they would do it, but I mean, it's so easy to connect the dots with Bob Murray saying that he wants to go out and make a big move. He wants to bring in offense. He wants to do this, and there's a potential top 10 player in the league available that wants out, and I mean, that kind of exactly fits the mold of what the Ducks need. And so we'll see.
Let me ask you this. One of the retorts to specifically for the Kings, and because there were reports this week of the Kings kind of just being out on Eichel and that's no longer a possibility. And one of the part of the reasoning there is that, well, Eichel isn't the guy that you kind of move heaven and earth for to get and to bring in to kind of give you that boost. Do you agree with that? Do you think that there really is this kind of cloud hanging over Eichel that makes him not worth bringing in?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that he's had some public frustrations in Buffalo, but look at that situation.
And I get the narrative, and I get like maybe some people might not think he's as good as he's maybe been hyped up to be. I think a lot just due to him being in Buffalo. And I think the comparison's always going to be there between him and McDavid because of going 1-2 in that draft. But after kind of you and I on our Patreon podcast did our ranking of our top 10, I did not have Eichel in my top 10, but I had him
number 8, I think.
Yeah,
7 or 8. Yeah,
I had him just missing out on my top 10, but kind of putting that entire thing together, doing all that, it made me realize though just how good he actually is. And I didn't even expect him expected to have him close to my top 10. And kind of after that, I'm like, okay, I've been underrating him, and I've kind of been in that boat of that. But I mean, he's a guy that's been he put up 78 points in 68 games in 1920 as a 23-year-old, 82 points in 77 games in 1819 as a 22-year-old, 64 points in 67 games as a 21-year-old. This is all on very bad teams in Buffalo. And even this past season, when Buffalo was just the absolute like shithole of the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be real here. He still put up 18 points in 21 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Eichel, the biggest value to me of getting Eichel, outside of the fact that you're getting a legitimate first line center, is the possibility of having an Eichel Zegras 1-2 punch down the middle.
Yeah,
Because I think that really elevates Trevor Zegras, because it takes so much pressure off of him.
And you make the point a lot that hockey can be a very, very much a strong link game. And the fact that you're now adding this number one center, that gives you a strong link there. And it's a really like, it really
you need stars to win.
Yes, and it really improves the Ducks' long-term outlook, and it also gives you a guy that him and Zegras can both be on the power play together. So, I mean, who knows if they do it? Who knows what it's going to take? And we have a question actually about that, so we'll get into that when we get to that question.
Yeah, well, I read a good article on Expected Buffalo, which is a good blog I want to check out, about like what the Ducks may potentially pay in an Eichel trade. It was more from like a Sabres perspective, but something in the neighborhood of, Comtois, a pick, a roster player, and then another pick. And I think one of those picks would have been the pick this year. And I think when you're a Ducks fan, it's really jarring to see names like that going back and picks going back. But Eichel is a star level player, and he's in his prime. He's entering his prime. And so you're going to have to pay a high cost. And so I could, like, where I've kind of settled on this, and I've definitely gone back and forth a lot on this topic.
Same.
There are two strong cases to me where there's a case of, you don't want to totally gut the system, throw all your chips into the middle of the table to get this one player and then just hope it works. But on the same side, getting a star player, like accumulating those assets, is part of the reason it gives you that flexibility to go out and get those stars, because realistically, having a bunch of, potentially solid depth guys isn't as valuable as having one star player. And so, again, I don't really have a hard stance either way, but I think it's not fair to just say, they shouldn't do it at all. Or they should absolutely do it.
I will say this: if the Ducks would have actually sold guys over the last year or two, I would be a lot more comfortable with selling a bunch of guys this to get Eichel, where you have more assets to be able to do it. But having said that trade that you mentioned, I would do that, because that deal, although yes, it sucks to not have your third overall pick, at best, I mean, if Matty Beniers drops to third, does Matty Beniers become Jack Eichel? No,
100%.
No. And so I think if you can do a third overall pick plus Max Comtois plus, some Henrique or Silverberg for salary and a second round pick, I do that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And if it costs you 2 firsts, that's a tough pill to swallow. But if one of those firsts is this year, a draft that you're not hugely excited about, and next year would be rough, but you are getting Jack Eichel.
Yeah,
and that's exciting, and that changes your long-term outlook.
Yep.
And especially if Buffalo kind of still wants, like, they still want to chase the playoffs, and so maybe they want a Henrique or a Silverberg. Mm-hmm. That also helps you long term.
And it's easy to sell that we now have the first and the third overall pick in this draft.
Exactly. So maybe I'm talking myself into it a little bit, slowly but surely. But again, if you come at me and tell me, they shouldn't do it, I don't think that's a crazy take.
Agreed.
Because I think it's a defensible take. Yeah.
Agreed completely. So before we get into some more topics on this and some more questions that we have, I think it's about time for a word from our sponsor.
Yes, 100%.
So, kick your summer off in style with the brand that's reinventing men's basics, Mack Weldon. Mack Weldon is so much more than just underwear. Their full collection includes t-shirts, polos, button-ups, shorts, pants, swims, and so much more with light and breathable fabric technology. Mack Weldon keeps you cool and comfortable all summer, from work to working out, happy hour to playing with your kids. Mack Weldon has men's essentials for whatever your day includes. And so, your usual summer activities. Felix, you and I are both big on going on walks throughout the day, doing those different types of things like that. They have their new Maverick Tech Chino short, or their Mack Weldon swim short or radius short, all these different shorts that you can wear that are perfect for any sort of occasion like that. They kind of are able to keep you nice and cool on your walk on a summer day. You can look good doing it. They also have their Vesper Polo, which is a nice, light, breathable polo. And I mean, there's swim trunk and board short though options. I mean, you've mentioned this a couple times. I don't know if it's been on this podcast or our Patreon, but you like to go for your beach swims. You like going, especially after working out, for a nice little cool down swim for your muscles. I mean, Felix, their board shorts, their trunks, quick dry, 4-way stretch fabric. I mean, what more do you want, right?
Yeah, I actually recently got the 4-way active short, and it's been a great addition to my wardrobe because it's extremely comfortable. And like their other, like the pants that they have, the radius pants, different things like that, you can use it for anything. I can work out in them, I can squat in them, I can go on a run, but I can also like go out, hang out with friends, and like it looks like something that is presentable. And so I can't recommend Mack Weldon enough, to be honest with you. The material, like for their underwear, their t-shirts, the Pima Crew neck t-shirt, it's just so comfortable. And especially right now in Southern California, as it's heating up this summer, I mean, this weekend it was pretty hot. I think it's the way to go, and it's affordable. And especially if you use their code, I think you're going to get a lot of benefit out of it.
Yep. And they also have, I mean, speaking of affordable, they have a free loyalty program called Weldon Blue. Level 1 gets you free shipping for life. Once you reach level 2, by spending $200, you get 20% off every order for the next year. Stay cool this summer and look great doing it with the all-new collection of men's essentials from Mack Weldon. So for 20% off your first order, visit mackweldon.com/CTP and enter the code CTP. That's CTP like Crash the Pond. That's mackweldon.com/CTP, promo code CTP for 20% off. Mack Weldon, reinventing men's basics.
Yeah, go check them out, please. I can't recommend it enough. It's just so comfortable. So go do that. Help us out and help yourself out. Okay. Let's you want to get through the rest of these questions?
Sure. Let's kind of start blitzing through some of them. We have some Twitch questions, so we'll get to those. Hold on to your questions. Bring us the dingus. I'm seeing this. We'll jump back on Eichel and everything like that, but we're just gonna blitz through these Twitter questions right now.
Yeah, so some of these, I mean, are just kind of fun. This one is from B Matsubara, which is, why do you hate Luke Hughes? So I don't know if this was asked to, actually wanting an answer or just trying to call us out. I don't know. I just want to say, don't hate Luke Hughes. I guess maybe our takes can be really strong either way on players, and we have a lot of belief in our takes on certain guys or analysis. Don't hate Luke Hughes, though. He's just not a guy that I would draft at number 3. I think that there's definite upside with him. I think he's clearly got that ability to transition the puck to defend both off the rush and in his own zone. But there are red flags with just his maturity level. There's an injury history there, and so I think now it's easier to make this case because I just think at number 3, the risk to me doesn't seem to be worth what you might get for him. And a very good second pairing defenseman, possibly a first pairing guy.
He does have offensive upside that some of the other guys do not. I mean, I think he's below Brandt Clark in that, and I think that's kind of where.
But he's good at carrying the puck up ice, which is a valuable skill.
Yes, definitely. But I think Brandt Clark's a little bit more dynamic. I mean, maybe Brandt Clark falls off for you because his skating's not as good as Luke Hughes' skating. But there is a concern for me with Luke Hughes and the injury. The fact that it's I believe, an ankle injury, which can be significant with your skating stride. And it can take a long time for your ankle to heal, and it may not ever heal up in that same way. And so in the same way Peyton Krebs fell a little bit for his Achilles injury a couple seasons ago, I think Luke Hughes kind of is falling into that same boat. For better or for worse.
Yeah, and just to finish on a positive note, I mean, he is younger for the class, so there's definitely room for growth there. But no, I do not hate him. I don't think Jake hates him either.
Nope. I think he's a top 10. He's a top 10 draft talent.
Like totally worthy of being in this kind of group of players, but just not who I personally would select where the Ducks are at. So hopefully that addresses that. Let's go to this one from Krim, which is, what are the moves each of you think need to be made through both drafts, trades, free agents, etc., for this to be construed as a successful offseason? So that's kind of an interesting thought. I mean, I guess big picture, once the dust settles, what do you think will have made this a successful offseason for the Ducks?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because I think it depends on what you think the outlook for this franchise is next.
Well, he's
season.
Asking us.
No,
so
I know.
Yeah.
But I'm setting it up that I think that's an important thing to set the stage on. I think for me, it's finally embracing this rebuild, and I think that setting up this team not necessarily for success next season as being the priority, but setting it up for long-term success should be the priority. And so I think that for me personally, it's got to be, you got to look to move out a guy with value, move out move out a Rickard Rakell, move out a Josh Manson, move out these guys with some value and recoup some younger talent, reset the roster, get it younger. The Ducks roster is in this weird spot where they kind of almost have these two different kind of main cores of the roster. They have their prime age talent, and then they have their kind of younger talent
the middle-aged players, as Bomber would call them.
Yeah, so they've got their group that's like 20 to 23, 20 to 24, and they've got their like 27 to 30-year-olds. And the issue for this franchise is those 27 to 30-year-olds are not good enough to be the core of a team. And that's not, like, I'm not trying to make that a mean statement, a rude statement, anything like that. It's just the truth of the situation, and that's kind of where the Ducks...
Well, also, the compounding issue is that they are going to be free agents next offseason.
Correct.
And the longer you wait, the more their value goes down. And if you do end up re-signing them, their performance will likely decline, and it will reduce your ability to maximize the primes of your Zegrases, of your Comtois, of your Terrys. So I think that I 100% agree with that. I think that all in all, if the Ducks just do absolutely nothing this offseason, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but I don't think it would be this kind of smashing success either. I do agree with you. They need to make some kind of bold move, and not just for the sake of doing it, like we've just laid out here. There are good reasons to move on from at least one of these players, ideally all of them. I think if you really want to go scorched earth, I don't think it would be the worst thing.
I mean, let's just say, if you're the Ducks, and I think if they end up getting a Jack Eichel and you have to move your third overall pick, I think if you then can flip a Josh Manson or a Rickard Rakell for a first rounder, even if it's a later first rounder to a team that's in the playoff mix or something along those lines, and you get their first rounder for this year, you're at least kind of adding a player back into your prospect system with a pick in the teens or in the 20s. And I think that would be a really smart move for this Ducks franchise, where yes, you're losing your third overall pick, but you're at least getting another first round pick for later in the draft.
Yeah, and selfishly, I think another reason why I think I want to see them do something is because at the trade deadline, when you and I were being critical of the fact that the Ducks stood pat, the overwhelming response was, well, just wait until the summer. Obviously, they were never going to get what they wanted now, so it's all about the summer. So it's like, okay, well, let's see it. Let's see it happen. If this is supposed to be the pie in the sky, well, I want to see it happen. So
essentially, a put your money where your mouth is situation.
Exactly. But removing all personal bias, I do think that just looking at the way this team is structured and how they can be most successful long-term and in the most sustainable fashion, they do need to move on from one of these players, at least one of these players. So I think that answers the question. Let's move on to this question from Dalton Keys, friend of the show. Can you think of any free agents? I think you already touched on this a little bit. Can you think of any free agents that would sign a one-year deal that the Ducks may target so they could potentially be flipped at the deadline? So you brought up Nick Foligno. And do you have any other ideas, or do you want to expand on Nick Foligno?
I think Nick Foligno is an interesting one. It depends on if they end up moving out in Adam Henrique. There is a little bit of a hole at the center position, depending on kind of where things end up falling. Depending on, who knows what happens with Derek Grant, if they want to keep Derek Grant, or if they end up doing what they should do and put him in the AHL or buy him out or something or trade him. Who knows? Nick Foligno as your fourth line center. It would be an improvement on Derek Grant, but anyone's really an improvement on Derek Grant. And I think one of the things I mentioned with him was that he will have trade value.
Well, the Ducks have a bunch of centers for next season. That's kind of
true.
Another subplot.
Well, if they move out Henrique, they would have Zegras, Getzlaf, Lundestrom, Grant.
Well, Sam Steele.
Oh yeah,
is still there.
Sam Steele should be moved to the wing. There's that. So fair enough. But I guess the other thing is, if you move out Josh Manson, you might want to look at bringing in a right shot defenseman. So maybe you look at like a Jason Demers, and I don't think Demers has that much value.
Maybe like a depth defenseman.
Yeah, Ian Cole. I don't know. I think David Savard will actually take a pretty penny to get. But if you could get David Savard on a 1-year deal, that might work well. But I don't think
Tomas Tatar.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of looking through this. Looking at maybe a depth defenseman, right-hand shot defenseman. Maybe the Ducks look at bringing back
Brandon Montour.
Oh no, that was not where I was going with that.
Okay.
I was going with Eric Goodbranson.
Yeah, the thing is, I feel like the Ducks do have defensemen. It's
I
just
mean,
they're unwilling to play some of them.
they could end up just bringing back Yanni Hakanpää also and flipping him
Well,
again at the deadline.
maybe Cody Curran will get to play in the NHL at some point.
I think it's more likely they bring back Yanni Hakanpää than Cody Curran getting a look.
I think you're probably right. So, yeah, I think that to kind of to give you an overarching answer here, Dalton, it's just I don't know if there's a lot to be gained for the Ducks in this free agent class. I mean, that could probably be true for a lot of teams in the NHL is to stay away from free agents. I think to me, unrestricted free agency is for the teams that are on the cusp, that are of kind of like a couple of moves away. They're tweaking their roster, but the base has been set. And that's not really where the Ducks are at right now in their contending.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to make a lot of mistakes on UFA deals. You're going to overpay for guys for way too long. And the thing is, it sucks. It shouldn't work this way. But at the end of the day, you can at least stomach that somewhat when you're contending and eat the later parts of the deal. I mean, look at what the Ducks are doing with Ryan Kessler right now. That's almost standard practice in the NHL now is that you end up in this awful position and at the end of the deal, but you do that to give yourself these players in your contending window.
Yeah, what did Bob Murray say in his interview? Everybody has some funky contracts.
Yeah, something along those lines. So I mean, I'm looking at the list. I mean, Brandon Saad would be a really nice get, but it wouldn't make any sense.
Again,
sign
it's like what it's like. Yeah, good player, but what's the point?
Yeah, and so. Level 2 Pittig is asking once Zegras and Drysdale are up for deals, you're not going to want Demers or Foligno. No, and the whole purpose I'm bringing up Foligno and Demers, these aren't players that I think that they should sign to make the Ducks better. I think that these are all players that I'm bringing up that I think the Ducks should sign to 1-year deals so that they can
or
flip
2-year.
One-year deal to flip them at the deadline as UFAs.
Sure, or potentially 2 because maybe a team will perceive that as better value for them to then have another run.
I mean, yeah, it depends. I mean, the issue here is that a lot of teams are going to be in a cap strap world for a long time with the flat cap. And so I don't think teams actually will want guys with term going forward at the deadline. Teams are, I mean, you heard Kyle Dubas mention it at this past deadline that basically he typically likes to find guys with term. And this year rentals make more sense because of the cap flat. And so or flat cap. And so that's kind of where I'm at with this is, you sign a Nick Foligno to a 1-year deal with the understanding he's going to come in. He gets to bring his family to Orange County for a 6-month vacation, and then he can go chase a cup somewhere else.
A nice staycation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's move on here to this question from Z13 Ducks. And I actually want to point out, because I forgot to mention this earlier, we talked about the shoot for Zegras at the beach for Bauer Hockey. And one thing that I don't think anyone else, I haven't seen anyone else bring up, but at that specific part of the beach, and this isn't a brag at all, but I live right by there. And so that's where like all the beach hockey happens, like the Comtois pictures you saw over the summer, the beach hockey league, like that's where he plays. And that lifeguard tower that was right in the background of that shoot had number 13 on it. And I'm sure, I don't know if it was intentional.
I think you're the only person that noticed it.
Trevor Zegras' number in college was number 13 coming up. And, there's been some jokes even among the media of, hey, is 46 your actual number? So maybe it was intentional. So anyway, Z13 Ducks, thank you for evoking that because I think that was an important Easter egg that nobody else noticed. How dare you all?
Wow.
Okay. Anyway.
Wow.
I like this question though. So do you think that we will see any prospects take a jump to the NHL out of camp besides Drysdale and Zegras, Perreault maybe, or to the AHL like Thrun, Lacombe, or Tracy? So for Thrun, Lacombe, or Tracy, I mean, I think Tracy will be in the AHL next season. I don't think is he even eligible to go back to junior?
I think he can go back to junior, but it would be as one of the overagers in the WHL. And I have no idea if maybe they may end up like amending their rules or creating an addendum to their rules for this next season to allow overagers come back for an extra year.
He might actually benefit from that.
I wonder if they look at doing that, but most likely Braden Tracy's going to end up in the AHL next year. Lacombe or Thrun, I think I've heard Lacombe is going back for sure for another year. Thrun, I think, is going to go back. I mean, here's the thing with those guys is we would have probably heard by now or we'll hear in the next little bit if they sign their entry-level deal. And if they don't sign basically the reason for that, the purpose of that or needing to know that is that if they have not signed their entry level deals, that makes them still eligible to go back to the NCAA. So if they haven't done that, I would assume they're not going to be in the NHL next year. They're not going to be at training camp. These are guys that will want another year. It would make sense for Thrun to want another go at it at Harvard.
Especially with, I mean, did they even have a season this year? I don't think they did at Harvard.
He ended up going. No, so he ended up going
USHL.
He went to the USHL. I think he played for the
Chicago?
the Dubuque Fighting Saints.
Yeah.
I think that's who he ended up playing for. So Perreault's an interesting one. I mean, he didn't even get a sniff of the NHL, so I would think that Perreault is going to end up back at the back in junior next year. By the way, just want to mention, Bring Us the Dingus brings us up, and I feel very sad that I forgot to mention this when talking about free agents that the Ducks should sign to them flip. The reunion of the RPG line.
Yeah, Bobby Ryan. And Corey Perry.
Yeah, there's no way that's happening now that Bob Murray's still with the team.
It's not happening, but man, would it be fun?
Oh, it'd be
so. And if you think that idea is stupid or that we're dumb for saying that, well, whatever. Go kick a rock really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Jacob Perreault, I mean, he is an interesting one because, I mean, when we did watch him in the AHL this year, looked good, but his options are very limited. So, I mean, I think junior probably is what's going to happen there.
I think the only player that maybe could is a name that's been mentioned a little bit in the Twitch chat is Bo Grew. That would maybe be the only name that maybe would get a sniff of the NHL in terms of a prospect to start making his name, and that's kind of where I'm at with it also.
Well, I mean, I think, depending on the injury situation, Lucas Dostal could get some. I mean, it's very possible that Dostal gets some games next year.
Yeah.
I mean, John Gibson could get hurt. Anthony Stolarz could get hurt. And so he could come up and maybe he makes an impression. It's
very unlikely that you go an entire season without one of your goalies getting hurt.
Exactly. And so, but outside of that, I mean, the way that the Ducks minor league system is kind of structured right now, there aren't really prospects that are just kind of right on that cusp of making the leap. I mean, even Grew, I know there are people who really like Grew, and I've definitely liked the games that I've seen of him in the minors this year, but maybe another, like a real season in the AHL may benefit him.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get further experience. And also, as we were just talking about, there is a bit of a logjam down the middle for Anaheim. And maybe Sam Steele gets moved this summer and maybe that frees up space for him, but I don't really see how he makes that leap next year unless something really changes at the top.
Yeah. Caitlin, and kind of this is a good follow-up to that. Caitlin Van Els, Kate VA48 asks, and I think this kind of goes in line with that last question. Any chance any of the top prospects play next year in the NHL besides maybe Beniers or Powers?
Yeah, so for the top, I mean, specifically, I guess, for who the Ducks may draft, I don't know. I mean, I think that, like Power is not going to play next year.
Yeah,
he's going back.
He's mentioning that he wants to go back for another year at Michigan. It wouldn't shock me if Matty Beniers is the same way.
Yeah, I mean, Beniers has a very pro-ready profile, but maybe he makes that same jump. And then, I mean, from the guys that we've talked about on this pod, Brant Clark, William Eklund, none of these guys really profile as guys who are going to make an immediate leap. And so, I mean, that's, again, part of the reason that people are down in this class is there are not guys who are profiling to be super ready. So it's a good question because, last year when we were discussing the draft, that was one of the components of our evaluation was how ready is this guy? And I think for this year, you kind of have to throw that out the window a little bit because most of the guys aren't.
Yeah. And we got a couple more, so let's just blitz through these questions. Clark, Ducks 2007 Quack asks, what's more likely, the Ducks making their draft pick or trading it? And do you have a bold prediction for the Ducks offseason?
My bold prediction is that they, I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I think they will make one significant trade. How about that? There's my bold prediction. They make one significant trade.
Yeah.
I don't know who it'll be. I don't know what.
Okay. The first part of the question, what's more likely, them trading their draft pick or making their draft pick?
I think they'll make their pick.
Yeah, same. And Clark also, we had mentioned already about the trade package for Eichel. So we already had kind of mentioned that. But Duncan asks at Ginge Gantor, and this is directly at you, will the Warriors be a championship contender next year? You didn't say it had to be a hockey question. This is specifically at you.
Yes, they will be.
Okay.
Klay Thompson healthy, Steph Curry MVP mode. Yes.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to this, so let's just go with that. Time asks, will the Ducks have a better record next season?
I think that a full season of Trevor Zegras not being just jerked around the lineup and up and down between the AHL and the NHL, I think that that will make a big difference. I think that they will be a slightly better team next year, but I don't know by how much more.
And then Scott, and so I'm going to get to Twitch questions. I will scan up and go to kind of old ones, but if you have questions, start throwing them in the Twitch chat. Final one is, will Aiken this is from our good buddy Kestrel Scott. Will Aiken survive till the All-Star break?
I think he gets through the whole season.
I think he gets through the whole season also.
I think there's one more from Twitter.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, this is from DB Lowry.
Okay.
Good friend of the show.
Yeah.
He says, should the Avs look for a package from the Ducks? Lindholm, Henrique, and Gibson would all seem to be good ads for the Avs needs. Plus, they have the young assets in Byram and Newhook. So this is something that I did kind of want to talk about with you is Colorado Avalanche lose against the Vegas Golden Knights in shocking fashion. And do you think that they look to upgrade a net? And does the Gibson conversation pick up at all?
I mean, isn't Grubauer, I feel like he's a UFA, isn't he?
Yes.
So, I mean, that does impact it, whether what he wants. And maybe they do look at improving it. And if, I mean, John Gibson would be a great person for them to look at. If I'm the Ducks, yeah, the conversation. What was the question specifically again from DB Lowry?
So it said, should the Avs, so this is, I guess, from an Avalanche perspective, should they look for a package from the Ducks? Lindholm, Henrique, and Gibson would all seem like good Avs for the Avs needs. Plus, they have the young assets in Byram and New York. So it's not specifically about Gibson, but is there a trade to be made between these two teams?
Yes, I think that there is. I think you can also throw out the window the in division aspect of it because they will not be in the same division, which does impact it somewhat.
Even if it's not Gibson, like Lindholm would be a good get for the Avs. Yeah. Bring in a solid defensive defenseman,
left-hand shot defenseman. Because I think Cale Makar's right-hand shot.
To kind of supplement their blue line a little bit, and that wouldn't be as hard of a trade to pull up, I don't think, just because of Lindholm's contract status, and then maybe you get a pick and a prospect out of that. The Gibson one is interesting to me just because that is a harder one to pull off with his contract. And I mean, what it would cost.
Do you think Lindholm could get you Newhook?
Well, I mean, where does he rank in their prospect pecking order? He's probably one step below Byram?
Yeah, one step below Byram.
Would they do that? Like, is that?
I mean, Newhook was playing for them in the playoffs already.
Yeah, I mean, if you can pull that off, if you're the Ducks, then yes. From a Ducks perspective, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the Avs do that. I mean, the thing with the Avs is, I just don't know how they react to what just happened to them.
Yeah.
And, do you just completely run it back and say, well, we were missing Nazem Kadri and
small sample size, everything that you should be saying after this type of thing.
But they did get handily outplayed in like a few games in a row there.
And Grubauer was not great in that playoff series.
So, I mean, I think if you're the Avalanche, Lindholm and Gibson are probably the guys that you want to target.
Would you do Lindholm and Gibson for Newhook and Byram and then a contract to make things work?
Yes.
Would the Avalanche do that? You had Lindholm and Gibson.
They might. I mean, that for where they are in their arc, that makes a lot of sense because you're solidifying basically everything that they could stand to improve in, right? So defensive depth and then in net.
Yep.
And yes, it does cost you your...
And the Ducks the Ducks get a dynamic forward in Newhook, and they get a dynamic defenseman in Byram.
I don't know if the Avs do that because there is, their approach has been to kind of stay the course and to just be patient. But they are very close, and you saw Nathan McKinnon's demeanor in his press conference after that game. And so who knows? I mean, who knows what direction they go? But I think it's a fun topic because maybe something will happen there.
Yeah. I mean, the Avs probably don't do that, but I mean, here's the thing: they don't.
Do they get impatient? Like, do they just say?
Well, it's not only do they get impatient, but it's also looking at. I mean, you look at what for instance, McKinnon's post game comments that he's been in the league for 10 years and hasn't won shit. I think that was his exact wording. And so you're not going to be losing anyone from your actual roster. Newhook was playing, but he was in a lower role. And Bowen Byram was playing from time to time, but he was not a set player for this roster. The Ducks are adding highly talented players that are younger that will help the Ducks contending window, whereas the Avalanche are getting guys that help them now. I think if you were to look at the Avalanche and add Hampus Lindholm to that roster now, I think they're a better team. John Gibson, same thing. And so I think that from that perspective, that would be a very, very good thing to do. So let's get into some Twitch questions now, though. So if you don't know, we do this show each and every Sunday at 8 p.m. Well, most of the time, every Sunday at 8 p.m. Who
8
knows
p.m.
what,
Pacific.
Yeah, 8 p.m. Pacific. Who knows where it's going to go with our beer league starting soon. But at twitch.tv/crashthepond, where you can watch us live, you can help support the show. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. You do have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days to subscribe to the show. And it does help out significantly. Use special emotes in the chat, special badges next to your name. So level 2 Pittig, and so we had a couple new guys in the chat. I noticed that I think aren't Ducks fans. So wanted to at
welcome.
least, don't want to interrupt the discussion. This was from earlier, but was wondering what the fans are projecting for Sam Steele. I was excited about him early on, but not sure if he has progressed in the way the Ducks fans had hoped. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just wondering. I'll let you take this.
Why are you putting this in my lap?
Because I know you're just chomping at the bit to get to it.
Well, I think within the fan base, there are still people. I mean, naturally, as a fan, I think a lot of people want to see Sam Steele succeed. They want to see him get to the place where they thought he could be. But the consensus seems to be now that he has not met expectations. And even within the organization, I don't think that that's how they view him. And quite honestly, I don't really know how he projects as an NHL player anymore. I think that the ceiling for him has definitely gotten lower. And I think that if you're kind of outside looking in, if you're someone who's not as familiar with the Ducks, stop looking at Sam Steele. Like, stop putting him in the conversation. Like, when people bring up the Ducks prospects and they say, oh, they have Terry, Comtois, Zegras, and they say Sam Steele, it's like, stop putting him in that group. Like, he is just not in that group.
Nope.
So purge the thought. Is there still a player to be had there? Is there still a guy who could end up being a useful NHL player? Possibly. But right now, there's no evidence of that.
Yep.
So there you go.
Bring Us says, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this was about Eichel? Isn't he still trying to recover from a pretty brutal head/neck injury? I'm not certain now is the time to trade him or trade for him, given the risk the receiver would take and the lowered value compared to him blowing up the league. He probably has between the public disdain and nature of the injury.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
With this whole neck injury situation.
Yep.
First off, I don't know that much about it. I don't know the specifics of the injury. I don't know the specifics of the procedure. I feel like the public has kind of gone, fait accompli with it and just said, well, he's having a neck injury, ergo his value has to be lower, stay away. And it's like, hold on. We don't know what the procedure is. We don't know the impact of that injury. And also, look at all the foul play that's going on over there. Is this just like a ploy, or not a ploy, but just like basically a chip that Eichel is using to pressure the organization to get him out of there? So again, it could be totally valid that he has that neck injury and that should definitely reduce his value. But at the same time, I wouldn't be so hasty to just say stay away purely based on that, because I feel like a lot of people are.
Yeah, completely agreed. I would honestly just talk to Eichel. I would, if I was interested in making a trade for him, I would try to get permission from the Buffalo Sabres, and I guarantee they would kind of give it because you're trying to make a deal.
Well, they want to get him out of there now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the buzz.
And so I think you need to have a conversation with him and see where he's at, how he's feeling, and why he is so on board with this surgery. And I think if you're a team acquiring him, you have to be okay with him doing this. I really do believe that. And I think part of that has to be understanding where he's getting his medical advice from and making sure that it's sound advice. And if it is, you have to let him do it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in his best interest, if it's going to help him, if it's going to help him be the best player that he can be, then yeah.
And just to be clear, so M. Young's throwing in the Twitch chat, apparently you'll be the first person ever to get that type of surgery. That's not true. I believe Chris Weidman, who's an MMA fighter, got this same exact type of surgery, and he actually had just been fighting in the UFC after that, and there have been multiple different MMA fighters getting it. So even though it is in its early infancy stages, there are a lot of athletes who have gotten it and have had it successfully. It's just considered, I don't know if experimental is the right word, but that, I think that's the word being thrown around, because it just hasn't, it's not a common practice to see this surgery in the US. And I think that that's the big reason for it.
I don't know about you.
I'm not a doctor, so I don't really want to comment on it too much, but that's just what I've been hearing.
I don't know about you, but, and maybe this is part of the reason why people have so much skepticism, is just, I'm not a big, I've never had surgery, and the idea of getting surgery sounds very unappealing. And to have the thought of someone like opening up my neck and getting in there, it makes me cringe. So
Yeah.
I understand why people are kind of raising an eyebrow at that.
Yep. So Lewis X209 asks, favorite fast food chicken sandwich?
Wow. I mean, is there really any difference between all of them?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Bold take. I mean, let's hear it.
Here's my bold big take here. So recently, over the last couple months, I decided to try a couple different ones because obviously I'd had Chick-fil-A previously.
Don't say Popeyes.
And I got Popeyes spicy chicken sandwich. I was very, very disappointed by it.
Well, there's a lot of hype.
There was a lot of hype, and it was so salty. It like didn't taste spicy. The flavor wasn't great. It was just tasted like so salty. I tried McDonald's because theirs is getting a lot of hype. Also, not great.
If you're gonna go to McDonald's, just spend $1 on a McChicken, and you'll get a cheap thrill.
But their chicken sandwich is getting hyped as being as good as everyone else's. And the thing is, I'm not the biggest Chick-fil-A fan, but I think I gotta give it to Chick-fil-A for the best like chicken sandwich or spicy chicken sandwich.
Look, maybe this is just me. Maybe this is just my own bias. But in life, go tried and true. Go with what works. Chick-fil-A works. Has not let me down. Get their spicy chicken sandwich.
Damn it! Now I found the actual answer. Sorry, it's not Chick-fil-A. It's Wendy's.
Oh no,
that's the right answer. That is the correct. Correct answer. It's Wendy's.
The differences again are negligible. I don't think there's a huge difference.
Also, you know what's a place that you shouldn't sleep on for a spicy chicken sandwich? Jack in the Box.
Ugh, don't bring that up again. Jack in the Box is trash.
Jack in the Box spicy chicken sandwich, and you also get a taco on the side. Oh boy! Oh boy!
Jack in the Box tacos are
just—they're delicious. They're delicious.
They're disgusting.
They're delicious. I mean, they're awful for you, and I don't ever want to know what's in it. So no one ever actually.
It's not food.
Yeah, it's delicious though. I don't care. I'm not going to fast food for like something that like I actually think is going to be like healthy.
It needs to at least resemble food.
No, it doesn't.
It just doesn't. It's an alien substance.
I don't go to McDonald's and get a breakfast sandwich thinking it's going to look like that.
To be fair, I don't ever go to McDonald's. But yeah. Anyway, let's move on. This is a divisive topic.
I mean, that's what we're known for, divisive topics. And having Tristan Miss says, who's the best Ducks trade deadline acquisition of all time? His opinion is it's got to be Patrick Eaves or David Perron. So
I'm gonna go David Perron.
Perron wasn't really a deadline acquisition though. He was, but I would you can count him. You
can put him in that category. David Perron had such an impact just in terms of that chemistry he had with Ryan Getzlaf, which has not always been easy to come by with Ryan Getzlaf. And really a huge shame that he got hurt going to the playoffs, but I would just kind of off the cuff here, he would be my pick.
You're not going to say Jarkko Ruutu?
Maybe a little French-Canadian bias there. Who knows? Can't confirm or deny.
Just completely no selling my random remembrance.
No, not Jarkko
Ruutu. The 2011 deadline.
Chris Stewart?
Brandon Peary?
That deadline, that 2016 deadline was just wild.
That was a fun deadline where they just went. Like, that was Bob Murray, more so than ever, just going for it and getting a bunch of guys.
Bob Murray peaked at that deadline. And I actually feel bad for him because that year, I think the Ducks did almost everything right. Yeah. And they got really unlucky in the first round.
Honey Badger's saying this is an underrated one. Robidoux was a really good acquisition before his leg snapped.
Interesting. Yeah, I wasn't really following the Ducks.
So
at the time.
that was the 13-14 season, and he kind of actually was exactly what they needed. And then in the first round against Dallas, his kind of knee buckled or got taken out from underneath him. Time twit.
The Ducks getting screwed by injuries in the playoffs.
Yeah, Brad May also is a good one from 06-07, but that's more so a depth type acquisition that wouldn't have obviously made an impact, but not in the level of the best.
Depth ads get lauded when it results in a Stanley Cup. So
exactly. I mean, I think I gotta say Patrick Eaves. Patrick Eaves for what he was able to do in that.
If you want to talk production,
yes, exactly.
Then yes,
yes. His production with Ryan Getzlaf was just unmatched. Like, it's nuts. I'm actually now just curious.
How different do you think the Ducks' trajectory ends up being if Patrick Eaves and Ryan Kessler and their careers just don't spiral out due to injuries?
I don't think it changes anything because they were gonna
Anything? I mean, I think they have another year or two of being at least like a playoff level team.
Maybe. But so, yeah, I mean, he played 20 games for the Ducks in the 16-17 season and had 11 goals.
Yeah, no, I think that if the Ducks, and he was great, and I like that stat is important. And I think that if the Ducks had remained healthy a little longer, they would have remained competitive longer. But to your point, it would have just delayed the inevitable.
For context, the Ducks' leading goal scorer this past season was Comtois with 16 and 55. Eves had 11 and 20 that season as a Duck. So, yeah. So, I mean, I just got to say, I mean, it's Eves and during that deadline acquisition and that period afterwards. It's not necessarily the time after that. I think that's the key thing, because the deadline acquisition did not include the contract extension.
I mean, how many games did Patrick Eves play after that? Like 17?
You are very high. Because it was
4?
not... No.
7?
No.
0?
9.
9.
He played 9 games over the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, so very low. Very low.
Yeah, very low.
Unfortunate.
Yep, definitely unfortunate. I mean, granted, I don't know if he would have kept up that production, but I think
he wouldn't have. But having an NHL level winger for Getzlaf,
and you can't take away. I mean, we talk about unsustainable stretches. You can't take away what he was actually able to do in that stretch. So, getting back onto the controversial opinions, Nate, who's notorious along with Lewis in our Discord chat of just having some awful.
Nate is a firebrand.
Awful food takes, says, "Why is cheese so nasty?" You're just Nate. Just stop. Go back.
Not.
Go do your homework.
Ouch. Ageist.
Maybe. M. Young saying, say Seattle takes Shattenkirk. What would you think takes the next, or who would you think takes the next step and that roster spot between Mahura, Curran, or Benoit? Well, I think the issue there is Mahura's left-hand shot. Curran.
I think those are all lefties.
Benoit. I think Benoit's a right-hand shot.
I mean, maybe it's Benoit, but I don't know.
I think they go out and sign Hakanpää again over letting those guys come up.
Yeah, I think all of those guys kind of have their issues.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yep. M. Young saying, side question for me specifically, who's winning the Euros? I actually don't have a great.
I've actually watched a few games.
I watched a little bit.
I watched Ukraine against. Well, now I'm already blanking. I watched the Austria game and the Ukraine game today.
I only have watched bits and pieces. And
Ukraine played Netherlands.
I started watching the Denmark Finland game yesterday, and then missed Christian Eriksen. And then for anyone out there, that was really traumatizing. Christian Eriksen is one of my favorite players. The summer I started supporting Spurs was when they bought him, and he was the first player I really connected with at Tottenham. So
I think it sounds like he's in. I think it sounds like he's doing okay now.
Yes, so, which is good to hear. And just from everything I always heard being a Tottenham fan, he's a really, really good, quiet guy, very kind of private, but a very, very good person. And so sucks to see any of that happen. But
England plays on Friday at noon.
Yeah. Do I go with England? So here's the issue. I haven't paid too much attention to the rosters, honestly, because I feel like the Euros have just come out.
You're not a true soccer fan.
Well, no, because the Euros have come out of nowhere. Especially
you didn't even know USA was playing last podcast, so
no, I didn't, and now I'm all in on that USA team. But regardless, the fact that the Stanley Cup playoffs are going on, there's a whole lot going on. It kind of has taken up.
Jake takes his work seriously covering hockey. Yeah, so that's why.
Yeah,
that's why. I'll give you that out.
I would guess that Belgium is a favorite. I mean, here, I'm curious.
Belgium looked good in their matchup against a team that I'm forgetting.
Euro 2020 favorites. I mean, France obviously has to be up there.
Yeah.
All right. So
how's Belgium looking?
Italy is what? Italy, I guess, is a favorite.
Yeah.
Italy, Belgium, Portugal. So I'm going to go with Belgium. I just think having Kevin De Bruyne is a huge, huge plus for them.
Belgium is the classic, like, I'm a soccer fan.
Now I'm spacing. I actually think Kevin De Bruyne got hurt in the Champions League final and now is not playing in the Euros.
I'll say this is a completely uneducated take, but Belgium is like the Carolina Hurricanes of soccer when international soccer. Just the trendy pick, doesn't ever get it done.
So
sorry, Jake.
KDB is currently out, but he might be back. But I mean, they have Eden Hazard. They have a lot of really, really good players. I think even without KDB, they're a bit of a force to be reckoned with. I mean, Belgium's been that way basically with this golden generation that they have of KDB,
Yeah.
as Hazard.
No, Belgium is legitimately good.
Belgium is very, very good. I mean, France is really good also. You know what? I'm switching my mind. I'm gonna say France. France is winning it. They're gonna take the Euros. It's captained by. I've legitimately done no research on the Euros as I'm saying this, because I was gonna say they're probably captained by Hugo Lloris again. So no clue if that's true. So just throwing that all out there. Shadow Ups Gaming says, if a significant deal does happen with the Ducks, does it happen during the expansion draft or during the entry draft? Oh, and Felix just muted. I think Felix is having some mic issues. So I'm going to quickly answer it because I had muted my mic for a quick second because my wife has Salem right next to me now. But I think that it would be during the entry draft is when that would happen. And yeah, so you there? You back, Felix? Oh, yeah.
I hear you.
You cannot hear me?
Oh God.
This is what we're known for, people. All the technical difficulties. So I'm gonna go with it. I don't know if the Ducks are gonna do a big deal before the expansion draft. I think
they're now I can hear you.
I think they're probably gonna wait until the end after the expansion draft to make a deal.
Sorry about that. I had a weird mic glitch. Apologies.
No worries. Of course that happened.
I don't know if anyone even noticed.
Oh, they did, because I made note of it because I had muted my mic because Monica came in with Salem.
Okay, so it was your fault.
Yeah, let's just go with it was my fault. Sure.
Sorry about that, folks. Sorry about that. If anyone's listening on the recorded, the wire on my mic just exploded out for some reason. No clue why that happened. Anyway,
Hockey Boys asked, question: all things equal, should the Ducks draft a forward or a D-man at 3?
Forward. You know, all things being equal, the position is more impactful up front. Those are the guys who are scoring. Those are the guys who are driving value. It's forward.
We did our top 10 players in the league.
They were all my top 10 players were all forwards.
Yeah.
So I'm biased, but that's me.
Yeah. So I'm not. So if anyone else has more questions, throw them in. I'm not necessarily seeing any more questions. So yeah. You know what?
Is it time?
It might just be time. It might be time.
Okay.
If you have questions, let us know. We can still get to them, but I mean, we can just start wrapping this thing up.
Well, if you have made it this far, congratulations, because you get to hear me talk about the Canadians for like 30 seconds. Game 1 tonight, Monday night, for listening Monday night against the Vegas Golden Knights. I've already put it on the record on thefourthperiod.com, but Habs in 7. There you go. Habs in 7 going to the Cup final. Jake, feel free to throw cold water all over my parade, but I'm irrationally confident. I will admit that, but the Canadians are playing great. I think that the Golden Knights are a better matchup for them than the Avalanche, and it's okay to be positive. It's okay to have belief, and I'm going all in. This is the year.
I mean, I'm definitely someone who has been outspoken on not wanting Vegas to keep on moving through for a lot of years now. And I think most likely Vegas wins this series.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to go out on a limb and just go with you and say Habs in 7.
Habs in 7. I think that they have the kind of team that can just play that gritty style with Vegas. And if Carey Price has a hot series, if they get some scoring from their skill players, the Habs do, I think they can win this series. It's going to be very difficult. I'm already extremely nervous for game 1. I hope we do a watch along for this series.
We can definitely get a watch. Is there a game next Saturday?
I don't know. Let me check actually.
Maybe we'll figure it out. But we do have this question from Just a Rush Guy that I forgot about. It was really far up, so my apologies. Thank you for reposting it. He said, "Why is Bob Murray still here? He has 1 year left, and why have him working on a long-term rebuild?" And I honestly think it's a money thing. Like, to me, that.
Well, I think you answered your own question. It's because he has 1 year on his deal, and the Samuelis in this environment don't want to be paying someone to not be working for them.
I think they've already hired his replacement in Jeff Solomon. I think that they don't want to have to pay Solomon to do a GM's job when they're already paying one, and so they're probably paying him like an AGM with the understanding he's going to get a nice raise next year.
Yep. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, and Duxco says he disagrees on the drafting thing. The Ducks should be looking to draft Wallstedt because of potentially trading Gibson.
Hey, if that ends up being true, I don't hate that.
I don't hate drafting Wallstedt 3 if you're trading Gibson.
Yeah, like if that is essentially the trade. And also, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's throwing in their support for the Canadians in this chat. I'm seeing Habs in 4, Habs in 6. Let's go Habs. You know, I'm loving this. I'm on like it's really a treat to be getting this kind of emotional support.
Salem, what do you think? Do you think Montreal wins? And she's just turned around on me as walking out of the room. So there you go.
Habs in 1 from Lewis. There you go. You got to believe this.
Yeah.
Like the last round against Winnipeg, it was like a little vacation for me. Now it's back to the stress.
Yeah,
every game.
Just a Rush guy says not Madden as GM. No, I think that you don't hire Jeff Solomon and bring him in if you don't have it set up for him to take that role. Madden, for as much as people do like him, he does not have any real experience in managing the cap, managing contract situations. He is essentially a pro scout, or an amateur scout. That's what he's known for. That's where he's gone. He's probably getting more experience as an AGM now. But Jeff Solomon has experience in negotiating contracts on both sides. He now, over the last 10 years, has had experience with the Kings managing their cap side of it, trades, everything like that. So Solomon's the guy that would take that spot.
Also, to Endless Majesty in the chat saying Knights in 6. How dare you? How dare you?
I mean, he did say sorry to you, so that means he's not doing it to spite you. And the thing is, Knights in 6 is a very reasonable pick.
It's a totally reasonable prediction, but it's no fun. It's no fun around here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and then, what makes you think Ducks go saying? What makes you think Murray won't sabotage the Ducks knowing he's fired? I don't think that's happening. You could argue he is doing that.
He's
acting, but
I would assume that if Murray is gone from the Ducks, he wants to be hired by another team at some point in time.
Yeah,
and having that
as a guy who's gonna just walk away from the game.
Having that on your reputation is not a good thing. I mean, look at essentially John Chayka's reputation throughout the league now.
Yeah, well, he's not coming back.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, do you want to wrap up here?
Yeah. So if you want to support us, one way that's very easy to do that's completely free to you, is go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review, especially if you are enjoying it. Leave us a 5-star review, and we will read it on the show. And so we did get a new one over this last week from Trickshot87. Fantastic, 5 stars. Says, Jake and Felix are the best. Great coverage of the Anaheim Ducks franchise. Been a fan of this team my entire life, and I really appreciate all that they do for the fan base. So thank you so much, Trickshot87, for that. We really, really do appreciate it. Currently at 198 ratings. So I think that was in that 198 from last time. So trying to push over 200. So if you are enjoying the show, something completely and very easy for you to do is just go hit 5 stars, leave us a review or a rating, and help us push over 200.
Okay.
And I do want to mention that actually is for all locations. So even though your Apple Podcast review only shows it for your country, we have a way to view it no matter what country you're in. So Trickshot87 was actually from Canada. So wherever you're at, Apple Podcasts on your app store, and leave a review, and we will be able to see it.
Yes, please do. So a few other different ways that you can support us. You can check out our Patreon site. So patreon.com/crashthepond. For $1 a month, you get access to our patrons only Discord chat, which is always a lot of fun during the Duck season. We have a chat in there during games where we're just going back and forth, and during the playoffs. And Jake is just busting out a Pop-Tart. No clue why. No clue why this is happening right now. But check that out. I mean, you get to connect with other diehard fans. You get to discuss the playoffs and just kind of react to whatever's going on, the latest Ducks news. For $5 a month, you get access to 2 bonus episodes where, like we talked about earlier, we'll do like league-wide rankings. We did our top 10 players. I think at some point in the coming weeks, we'll do, maybe this month or next month, we'll do like our award winners for the season. So that's for $5 a month. And then for $15 a month, you get access to everything I just talked about. You also get access to 2 watch-alongs a month, as Jake is just sticking this Pop-Tart in the camera. No clue why, eating on the show. This may be the first consumption of food that's happened on the show. Anyway, totally thrown off by that. So with the watch-alongs, basically you get to join us, watch games during the Duck season. Gives you an alternative feed to the usual broadcast, and where we really go in and try to analyze the matchups, the lines, give you stats on the fly. So it's definitely a different feel. For the offseason right now, we're doing basically just watch-alongs for playoff games, having a little fun with that. And then as the offseason progresses, we may do like old Ducks games, things of that nature. So that's all at patreon.com. Crash the Pond. Jake already brought up the Apple Podcast, so definitely go leave us a review there. Subscribe to us on Spotify. We're also on YouTube, youtube.com/Crash the Pond. So if you want to see the video version of this, you want to see Jake eating Pop-Tarts.
I'm just a chaos agent, and as Gabe Greenlee says, what a diverse podcast this has been. That's what you get from us.
That's what you get. So go check that out, youtube.com/Crash the Pond. Check out our website, crashthepond.com, crashthepond.com/shop. You can get one of the sweet t-shirts that Jake is actually rocking here. It's got our logo, our awesome logo. It's also got a logo on the back, and you can also get a hoodie there. So just go check that out. We'll have some articles going up there leading up to the different drafts this summer. You can find us on Twitter at Crash the Pond. Jake is on there at ReindeerGames91. And I'm on there at Felix_Sicard. So that is going to do it for us tonight, guys. This has been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody who submitted questions. And we will talk to you next week. Have a good one.
Bye.